Hello, Dr. Palash. Should we start?
Good afternoon, sir.
Yeah. Ready?
Yes, I am ready, sir.
Okay. So, should we start?
Yes, sir.
Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to this afternoon episode of Pursue. And this is first Pursue 5B1, which is General Pathology. We are streaming live from Kolkata. And we are continuing with the topic of genetic disorder. This is session 2. And to talk on that, we have Dr. Major Palash Kumar Mandal, who's an MD and Associate Professor Pathology at Sagar Datta Medical College, Kolkata. Also is a lab director of Deesan Hospital and Heart Institute, Kolkata. He has been taking a list of lectures in general pathology, and he had taken the first lecture on genetic disorder. This is the continuation of the same. Before I ask Dr. Mandal to start, let me request all of you to keep your mic muted, your camera off, and please don't share your screen. With this, let me request Major Mandal sir, please share your screen. Let's start.
Thank you so much, sir. So I straight away go to the introduction. Without introduction, I straight away go to the topic, that is the genetic disorders. And we have already discussed the basis of genetics. If you ask me what is the basis, that means what are the chromosomes, how are they numbered, etc., etc. So we will come to the disorders now. So there are the group of disorders, and this has been already discussed also in the previous lecture, that there are chromosomal disorders, there are these Mendelian disorders and multigenetic disorders. Okay, so
We can't. Yeah, we can see your screen now. Yeah, just make it full screen, please. Yeah.
yes,
No, it's not coming. You
I know, sir,
have to go back to your. Yeah. Just press that cross there, and yeah, press the full screen. Yeah, fine. Just press that hide. You can just press that hide also. That corner hide. Yeah. Fine. Great. Please start.
So above we have in the previous class already discussed about the different types of genetic disorders. Just the types of genetic disorders we mentioned. Number one was the chromosomal disorder, the second was the Mendelian disorders, and third were the group of multigenetic or multivariant disorders or complex disorders. Okay, so we will be discussing one by one each one of them, and today we will be discussing the chromosomal disorders, the disorders affecting the chromosomes. A brief recapitulation what chromosomal disorders mean. They arise from the structural or numerical alteration in the autosomes or sex chromosomes. Okay, and they are associated with high penetrance, means if that chromosomal disorder exists in a person, the phenotypic characteristics will be definitely seen or exhibited, and along with that the phenotypic means the physical characteristics, and along with that associated the characteristics which are not visual from outside, like this genetic sexual organ associated anomalies or internal organ associated anomalies, like somebody having some heart problems or intestinal problems, something. These are all quite present. I mean, they are not hidden, they are quite evident externally, as well as if we can look into the inside that person, we can see all these disorders are present either through endoscopic examination or through USG or CT scan, etc. So these have high penetrance. Okay, now Mendelian disorders, what do these mean? They have mutations in single genes, and the effects are large effects. Means though the genetic mutation is a small genetic mutation, but the effect is enormous. I mean the exhibition of the symptoms and the genetic and the disease presentation is quite severe. Okay, and such mutations are also there and have high penetrance. Okay, for example, sickle cell anemia is one of the examples, and there are many examples. When we go to Mendelian disorders and discuss the important ones, we will elaborate on them. Third is the complex multigenetic disorders. They are caused by interactions between multiple variant forms of genes along with the environmental factors. So environmental factors play an important role in this type of complex multigenic disorders, and they're very difficult to define which environmental factors are responsible, which genes are truly responsible. This is very difficult to elaborate because they are caused by the interplay of multiple genetic disorders, and all genetic disorders may not be we may not be able to screen. Okay, like for example, in these chromosomal disorders, we know that Down syndrome is caused by trisomy. So if we screen the chromosome 22, we may find that there is an extra chromosome in most of the cells, or it may be a mosaic where there may be a normal chromosomal pattern in many cells, some cells, and an extra chromosome in some other cells. Okay, that is called mosaic pattern. But in this type of disorders, such clear-cut genetic changes are not present because there are actually multiple variant forms of genes are involved along with environmental factors. That makes it very complex. That is why the name is complex multigenic disorders. Okay, the common disorders which are there, the lifestyle diseases and the autoimmune diseases like atherosclerosis, diabetes, hypertension. Okay, so and they do not follow a Mendelian pattern of inheritance. Okay, because there may be changes in the environmental factors. There may be some additional genetic involvement. So that's why the Mendelian pattern of inheritance is not exhibited in this type of group disorders. Okay. Now coming to the chromosomal disorders, the causes. As you know, euploid, these terminologies are important in genetics. You see the terminologies, the nomenclature, and also how do we recognize what chromosomal disorder is there by just the name. We have to try to understand, get acclimatized, because this is little different from the normal thing what we are studying till now. Okay, so what does euploid mean? It means exact multiple of the haploid number, that is 23. It is euploid. Okay, so euploid will be 46. Okay, so in human chromosomes, the euploid number stands for 46 because it is the exact multiple of 23 chromosome. But also if it is say about 69, it will also become a euploid. Okay, because it will again imply that it is 3 times the number of haploid number. Okay, so that is called hyperploid. It is the hyperploidy is also euploid state, is actually hyperploid state, not euploid. It is a hyperploid state. Exact multiple, exact double of haploid number is euploid. Okay, so I'm sorry for that. The exact double multiple, it should not be exact multiple, but it should be exact double multiple because we have 2 sets of chromosome, not 3 sets of chromosome. So euploid will be a exact double multiple of haploid number. Okay, aneuploidy will be when there is either less or more number of the chromosomes. That is called aneuploidy. Okay, so it is not an exact multiple of the 23 chromosomes. So it will be either 23, 46 plus 1 or 46 minus 1. Okay, so that is aneuploidy, not exact multiple of 23. And this aneuploidy can be caused due to either non-disjunction or anaphase lag. Now what is non-disjunction? It happens during gametogenesis where one chromosome has this gamete has extra chromosome. One of the gametes, suppose an ova or a sperm, when it is going to fuse and form a zygote, one of them has got an extra chromosome or even a less number of chromosome. Okay, so if there is an extra chromosome, when the fusion is taking place for resulting in the formation of zygote, the chromosome number becomes trisomy. Okay, the gamete had n plus 1, so the n plus 1 becomes 2n plus 1 in the zygote. So it becomes a trisomy. It becomes a chromosomal disorder, trisomy chromosomal disorder. Okay. Now what happens in the other case where the number of chromosome was one less in one of the gametes, either sperm or ova? What did it result into? It resulted into a monosomy. Monosomy, that means 2n minus 1, because already there was minus 1 in the one of the gametes. Understand? So this you have to understand, that while fertilization, what is the end result? Okay. Anaphase lag, what does it mean? That during one of the homologous chromosomes during meiosis or mitosis, what lags behind? One of the chromatid lags behind and is left out of the nucleus. Okay, so during this during the separation, once the anaphase, after the anaphase, when it is going to be separated in the telophase, so these chromosomes, one of the chromosome, instead of going to the nucleus, is lagging behind and is left out. So once the nuclear membrane is formed, the cytoplasmic the nuclear division is complete, cytoplasmic division is complete, that chromosome is left out. It does not enter the nucleus, and a chromosome cannot stay in the cytoplasm also. So what happens? That the chromosome becomes one cell has a normal number of chromosome, the other cell has got one less number of chromosomes. Okay, so this you have to understand, that this is the basic cause for the happening of chromosomal disorders. And chromosomal disorders broadly can be classified into autosomal disorders, which are involving the autosomes, and the sex chromosomal disorders, which are involving the sex chromosomes. Okay. So coming to the commonest autosomal disorder, it is the Down syndrome. So we are all familiar with these individuals, either as children or as adults. We have seen them, and it is the very common disorder leading to mental retardation. It was named after physician John Langdon Down in 18th century, and who described and it is described as the Mongolian child of European parentage, Mongolian syndrome. He described it first. Okay, so in 18th century, this gentleman or the physician described Down syndrome, and after him it was named. Incidence different for different mother's age. As the mother's age advances, the incidence increases. Okay, but basically it has been divided into this as per ethnic groups. Like in Indians, it is 1 per 860 of live births. Okay, so it's quite high. After every 860th birth, there will be a one Down syndrome. So you can imagine, since we are a country with a large population, so how many Down syndrome children may be moving around. Okay. So it is neither an autosomal recessive or dominant trait, because it is a autosomal trait. So it is neither recessive or dominant, because there is an addition of a chromosome. There one chromosome has been added. Okay, and 92 to 94% of these cases result from the non-disjunction of 21st chromosome during fertilization. So during fertilization, as we were discussing, the two categories, one was non-disjunction and second one was the anaphase lag. So during meiosis, the non-disjunction, it should be during meiosis, not during fertilization. One of the in the female, I mean the ovum. So there is a during the meiosis, there was the non-disjunction, the ovum. Okay, so the chromosomal non-disjunction in the ovum led to this once during fusion and fertilization led to this formation of 47XY, that is plus 21. Okay, so there was n plus 1 in the ovum, which resulted in the formation of this 2n plus 1 in the zygote. Am I clear? Okay. Then there is a second category who have a better phenotypical and endocrinal characteristics. Not general characteristics, because they are mosaics. Mosaics means that some of the cells, they have chromosomal 46XX or 46XY, depending on whether the person is a male or a female. Okay, and the second genotype will be 47XX plus 21. Okay, so this is a mosaic, means some of the cells have, and depending on the percentage, the expression of the disease will be decided. Expression will be decided. If there are more number of 46 XX or XY, the phenotypic characteristics will be less, okay, of the downs. Whereas if the 47XX or XY plus 21 is more, then the phenotypic characteristics of the downs will be more. Okay, so mosaicism gives some protection to the Down syndrome children. Okay, now there is a third category which is about 3 to 4%, that is known as Robertsonian translocation. So Robertsonian translocation means the breaking of chromosome 21 and getting it attached to another chromosome, like a chromosome 14 during cell division. So it's called Robertsonian translocation. So these three genetic criteria, the genetic mutations, they happen most commonly. There are some other types also which are not discussed here, but remember, the most common, or the three most common types are this, out of which the commonest is due to non-disjunction during meiosis. During meiosis. Now there is something known as amyloid precursor protein gene, APP. So this gene has been found to be located in chromosome 21, and since this gene is altered, there is a mutation in this gene because of addition of chromosome 21. There is mutation of this gene also in Down syndrome. Okay, it has been detected that apart from the extra number of chromosome which is there in Down syndrome, this gene in 21st chromosome is also altered. Okay, and there is this same gene is also mutated in the Alzheimer's patients. So the people suffering from Alzheimer's disease, they also have the mutation in this gene which is located in chromosome 21. And scientists believe that excess AB gene causes the cells to die as it interferes with cell division. Excess AB gene. So there is excess amount of gene, the presence of the gene, which leads to the cellular apoptosis. And in brain, if you see, if the neural cells, they suffer from apoptosis or apoptosis, some pronounces that apoptosis. So this apoptosis leads to death of cells. Death of cells, if there is death of neurons, there will be Alzheimer's. Okay, so there is this genetic syndrome, Down syndrome, is also related to mental retardation, and that's the disease, the basis of disease of Alzheimer's, who also have mental retardation and dementia, and Down syndrome is found to have some common basis. Okay. The risk factors, the most important risk factor is advanced maternal age. Most important. So usually this is Down syndrome is seen in mothers who are 35 and above. And mothers who have one child with Down syndrome have the risk of a second Down syndrome baby. Okay. And parents who are carriers of this genetic translocation for Down syndrome, they can pose a risk for the next generation also. Okay, so though it is not this what we said previously is that it is not dominant or recessive, right? But there can be persons who can have a who can be a carrier, How? Because if one set of if the why how can they be carriers? They can be carriers if they have this mosaic pattern. Okay, they have this mosaic pattern, so who are not manifesting the disease, the number of the one set is quite normal, the other set is not this other set of chromosomes cells which are having this down extra chromosome, they are less in number. So those parents may become, who are not showing the morphological features of Down, they may be transmitting the disease to their progeny. Okay, so these are the various risk factors. Now, clinical features usually around 50 to 55 years. Okay, so that is the life expectancy of the Down syndrome. Understand? And what are the physical appearances? Very characteristic physical appearances. These are the very commonly seen physical appearances which will be enumerate. They have a flat facial profile and an upward slant to the eye, making them mongoloid. Mongoloid means the people of this mongoloid origin, they have this same features, who are also, they are normal people, like the people from China, in India, people from Northeast, they are called to be of Mongol. They have mongoloid features, means they have a small this eyes which have a little slant, they have a flat that high cheekbones, and these features are there. You know very well, so we are not discussing on that. So, and these mongoloid, along with the mongoloid features, they have a short neck, abnormally shaped ears, white spot on the iris called brush-filled spots, and a single and deep transverse crease on the palm of the hand known as simian crease. Okay, so this is there, and some have narrow axilla and big tongue and protruding belly with or without an umbilical hernia. Okay, so this may be there. They have saddle toes, means the first and second toe are widely separated, known as saddle toes, and mental retardation varies from mild to moderate. Why? Because of the type of disease. If it is a fully expressed disease like plus 21 in all the cells, it will have moderate mental retardation, not severe. Actually, it's moderate. Severe mental retardation, they will be totally, they will not be able to function, or they will have very less functional ability. But Down syndrome children, they have moderate functional ability. They can work if they are trained. They can work also. And of the teeth, some they show late development of the deciduous and permanent teeth, and teeth are often rounded or cone shaped, and they may be smaller with gaps, large gaps. Okay, these are the clinical features. So whenever you are asked to write a short note, make a note of this. What are you going to write? At times it comes, write short note on Down syndrome. It's a big thing, but you have to see what to write. So what first you write, that is the common cause of, it is an autosomal disorder. It is a common cause of mental retardation. What is the genetic configuration in this patient? Write that. then come to the physical characteristics. Okay, and this is the same thing which we have shown. This is taken from Robbins. So you see, it may have so many other types of translocation also. Mosaic type, there is another type, there is one deletion type. So this can be there, but the commonest type is the trisomy type. Okay, and they may have congenital heart defects, intestinal stenosis. Okay, and they have a predisposition to leukemia. This is there. So what are the other problems associated with children or adults of Down syndrome? They have various problems other than the physical characteristic or physical phenotypic characteristics we discussed. So that is why I was telling you when we were discussing the penetrance, they have a high penetrance. What does it mean? The disease characteristics which are seen physically from outside or within the organs from inside by our imaging techniques or endoscopic finding. So we can detect that these problems are existing. Okay, so what can be the cardiovascular? There can be cardiovascular problems. They may have ventricular septal defect, atrial septal defect, and PDA. Okay, they may have endocrine problems, thyroid problems, diabetes mellitus, gastrointestinal problems like stenosis and atresia. Duodenal and esophageal atresia may be present, and Hirschsprung disease may also be present. Hematological problems, the very dangerous problem is acute leukemia. They may develop acute leukemia or myeloproliferative disorders. They may also have neurological problems like epilepsy and behavioral problems, and many go on to develop Alzheimer's disease, as we were discussing the similarity between the origin of these two diseases. Okay, because of the mutation in AP gene. And some common and there are some common autosomal disorders also, like this trisomy 18 known as Edwards syndrome, trisomy 13 like Patau syndrome. They are there, but we are not going to discuss it because of paucity of time. If you are interested, you can read up on your own. When it comes to sex chromosomal disorder, there are two sex chromosomal disorders which are common. One is the Klinefelter syndrome, one is the Turner syndrome. So we will discuss these two only. Okay. So what is Klinefelter syndrome? It is a condition of male hypogonadism that results from two or more X chromosomes. The most important thing, there should be more than one X chromosome. Normally we have one X chromosome in a male. It's a male disorder. Okay. So females have two X chromosomes, that is fine, but in males only one X chromosome is there. But in male, if there are more than one X chromosome and the Y chromosome may be one or more, okay, then it becomes a Klinefelter syndrome. Understand? So the genetic configuration may be 47XXY, which is the commonest, or as in case of a mosaic, it may be 46XY or 47XXY, which is about 15%, or rarely there can be 47XXY and mosaics, and this is again a mosaic 48XXY. Okay, so they all fit into the above definition. That is, there is a one extra chromosome and one or more Y chromosomes. Okay, so this is perfectly fitting into the above definition. So all are categorized as Klinefelter syndrome, and it is the most frequent form of genetic disease involving the sex chromosome and also most common cause of male hypogonadism. It's named after American endocrinologist Harry Klinefelter in the 1940s. He described the disease, and after him the disease has been named, and the incidence is approximately 1 in 1000 live male births. What are the features, morphological features? The most important thing is small testes, that is microorchidism, which can only be detected after puberty. Okay, and sterility can also and only be detected after the person marries. Okay, eunuchoid body habitus. That is, a tall person with abnormally long legs, weaker muscle, poor coordination, less body hair, gynecomastia, and the person is less interest in sex, and the IQ may be normal, but less than normal, but there is no mental retardation. Okay, and there may be some degree of language learning or reading impairment. Some have deficits in executive functions like neuropsychiatric. If you do neuropsychiatric evaluations, there will be some deficit in executive function. Like if you order a person to do something, then that executive function may be diminished. Okay, there may be deficits in that executive function. And if you do a serum testosterone level, then definitely there will be low testosterone level. So this term hypogonadism means low hormone levels, not small testes. Hypogonadism does not mean small testes. What is the terminology for small testes? Microorchidism. Microorchidism is the terminology for small testes, and hypogonadism means the hormone levels are low. The male hormone level, if it is low, it is called hypogonadism in males. Okay. Similarly, for females, we will come to it. And the serum follicle stimulating hormone level, which is secreted from the anterior pituitary, that is high. FSH level is high because the testosterone is not being produced. The testosterone is not being produced. FSH tries to stimulate. FSH tries to stimulate this seminiferous cells, Leydig cells to produce testosterone. Okay, but there is less number of these cells, and hence there is no production of testosterone. Okay, so there is no production of testosterone, but the FSH level keeps on elevating, and also the luteinizing hormone level, LH level also is high. Okay. Now these are the images taken from the books and net, and which show these features which are seen in this individuals of Klinefelter syndrome. Okay, tall individuals with long legs, small testes, less pubic hair, and female type hair pattern, gynecomastia, breast development, and less tendency to grow chest hairs. Okay, so this is the morphology of a Klinefelter syndrome person. Now, what associated diseases can be there? That about 60% infants can have 60%. The best part is that most of these individuals are actually miscarried in the utero. So, about 60% of infants with not infants, fetus with Klinefelters result in miscarriage. Okay, and there is a high risk after the individual is born. There is a high risk of developing breast cancer because they have gynecomastia. So they have a high risk of developing breast cancer and extragonadal germ cell tumors also. And they are also, some of them are associated with these autoimmune diseases like SLE. Now coming to the next chromosomal disorder, sex chromosomal disorder, this is Turner syndrome. Turner syndrome is a hypogonadism in females. That was the hypogonadism in males, and this is hypogonadism in females. So it results from complete or partial monosomy of the X chromosome and is characterized by this thing. Understand? So it affects about 1 in 2000 live born females, and the genetic pattern is 45XO. This is O. O means absent. There should be, this is a monosomy. Okay, this is, most of them are monosomies. Monosomy in because there is a less number of chromosomes. Okay, Klinefelter syndrome was trisomy involving the sex chromosome, and this is a monosomy involving the sex chromosome. So it is 45. Understand? And Klinefelter is trisomy 47. Here what we see, one of the X chromosomes in the female is missing. Normally females have two X chromosomes, we are well aware of it, but most of these Turner syndrome females have less number of X chromosomes. Some are mosaics. Mosaics are by nature or by the providence, they are protected to some extent depending on the mosaic pattern. Okay, so what is seen in that, what is seen there is that some of them have 45 XO or X, and some of them have a normal chromosomal pattern, that is 46 XY, XX, sorry, no Y. They may have XY also, which will this makes them a little more towards a male phenotype, that is 45X with mosaic with 46XY. Okay, so these are the patterns. There are other patterns also, genetic patterns also, but these are the common patterns. And structural abnormality of the chromosome has been seen in 14% of these chromosomes. Okay, structural abnormality means there can be some ring chromosome, there can be some other types of chromosome, that is called structural abnormality. We have discussed in our first class. Now, among the genes involved in Turner phenotype, there is one gene called short stature homeobox gene. Short stature homeobox gene is also known as SHOX gene, which is located at XP, that is short arm, 2, that is region, 2, that is band, and 3 subband and 3 sub-subband. Okay, so this is the exact location of this gene. This is the X chromosome, that is X. T is the short arm of the X chromosome. 2 is the region. So we say it as XP22.33. Okay, so it is not XP22.33. It is we say it as XP22.33. Means short arm of X chromosome, region 2, band 2, subband 2, sub-subband 3, subband 3, sub-subband 3. Okay, so you have to know this terminology, how to say or what does it mean. So unless you understand this, you will not be able to understand the meaning of this written thing. Okay. Now, normally fetal ovaries develop early in embryogenesis, but what happens in these Turner syndrome people or individuals, that due to the absence of second X chromosome, it leads to accelerated loss of oocytes. So there is loss of oocytes, accelerated loss of the oocytes are continuously they are dying. There is this apoptosis. Okay, this loss means there is cell death. There is apoptosis, which is complete by 2 years of age. By the time the child attains 2 years, there is actually total loss of oocytes. That means, in other words, it has been metaphorically told that menopause occurs before menarche. Before menarche has started, menopause has already happened. That means there is complete loss of oocytes before the girl attains menarche or puberty. Okay, so there is atrophic or streak ovaries which are devoid of ova or follicles. You see, this is very important for you to understand. Externally we are seeing, but what is happening inside the ovaries, you have to know. So this is what is happening. The ovaries become very small, or streak ovaries, which are actually devoid of any ova or Graafian follicles. Morphology. How do they look like? Short stature, short and webbed neck, low set ears, low hairline at the back of neck, broad chest with widely spaced nipples, cubitus valgus, pigmented nevi. These are seen in most of the individuals, but the most common thing is short wave neck, broad chest with widely spaced nipples, and web neck. Okay, so this is the physical characteristic. This is an image taken from Robbins, and you see this is the physical characteristics, and these are the genetic characteristics. You see number of genetic characteristics may be seen in this condition, that is Turner syndrome, where we will only see one X chromosome. The most important thing is that the X chromosome number should be 1 in most of them, though in mosaics we can see in one set of cells single X chromosome, other set may have another X chromosome or even a Y chromosome. Okay, so this is the genetic pattern or mosaic genetic pattern. Various subtypes are there, but for easy to remember, you remember the most common ones are. This is the phenotypic characteristic which is seen in a Turner syndrome individual. Complications. So primary amenorrhea, they will never be able to give birth to a child because there is primary amenorrhea. But they can be, if they are treated early from pre-puberty with hormone therapies, etc., so things can be improved. But most common things which what we see in them is primary amenorrhea, congenital heart disease with pre-ductal coarctation of aorta, bicuspid aortic valve, and so on, and they may have some hormonal problems or endocrinal disorders like hypothyroidism, obesity, diabetes mellitus. Type 1 type of diabetes mellitus may be present in some of them. So we have come to the end of this chromosomal disorders of the sex chromosomal disorder. Now there are two other types of chromosomal disorders. They are known as hermaphroditism and pseudo-hermaphroditism. Now what are these terms? The genetic sex is determined by the presence of Y chromosome. Okay, so Y chromosome determines the genetic sex, remember. So that is why SRY gene is the one gene which is most important to determine whether the person is a female or a male. If there is a Y, that will be a male. If there is no Y, then it will be a female. Okay. Now gonadal sex is based on the histologic characteristics of gonad. So these are the three types of sex. How can we identify them? One is genetic sex, one is gonadal sex, and third type is the phenotypic or genetic sex based on the appearance of external genitalia. Okay, so phenotypic sex is determined by the appearance of external genitalia. That is, how do the genitalia look like? Now, sexual ambiguity is present whenever there is a disagreement between these various criteria for determining sex. Okay, so that is the ambiguity. Whenever it is present, it leads to the terminology called hermaphroditism. If all these match, there is no problem. Okay, so we have seen in Klinefelters, we have seen in Turner's, there is some amount of ambiguity is there, but most of the things are resolved if we go to the genetic sex and try to figure out. But in hermaphrodites, the problem is that there can be total, these true hermaphrodites can be a very complex genetic phenotype, in the sense that they may have presence of both ovarian and testicular tissue in gonadal sex determination. When we dissect out the gonads, we can find that both ovarian and testicular tissue, that is both Graafian follicles and seminal vesicles, not seminal vesicle, that is the anyway, so these both testicular things may be present. Okay, so what is happening is that these two things simultaneous existence or uh, simultaneous existence of these two tissues are important to determine whether if they are true hermaphrodites. So 46XX is found in 50% of the patients, but actually mostly they are mosaics. Mostly they are mosaics because they will have both this female phenotype genotype as well as male genotype. Understand? So that is a true hermaphrodite. Will have both ovarian and testicular tissue, and phenotypic characteristic may vary. Okay, they will have uh, uh, they may have a basically this enlarged either enlarged clitoris, or they may have a penis if they have a this is a 46XY is present. In case of this 46XX, they may have enlarged clitoris. Okay, that is the genetic sex, and other characteristics are not well defined because they may have this the stature and all are not very well defined, but this the genetic characteristics are very important. Okay, now what is pseudo hermaphroditism? Pseudo hermaphroditism means there is a disagreement between again phenotypic and gonadal sex. In true hermaphroditism, there was this ovarian and testicular tissues were present. There was this genetic sex was there, and which was exhibited also that there was presence of enlarged either clitoris or penis. Okay, but this true hermaphrodite, there is this genital ambiguity will be present to some extent, but here the genital abnormality ambiguity is more. Okay, so phenotypic and gonadal sex, there is problem because the person is looking like a female but is having a male genitalia or male like genitalia. The other thing is that phenotypically the person is a male, however that person has a female like genitalia, so there is an ambiguity. Then we have to do the genetic test. So when we go to the genetic testing, then it is found that the female pseudohermaphrodite, the genetic configuration is 46XX, like a normal female. Okay, so it is a pseudohermaphrodite. Person is a normal female, only due to the genetic ambiguity we thought it was a male. Okay, so that's why it is called pseudohermaphrodite. But it does have a uh, has a cause also. What is the cause of it? Because had it been just enlarged clitoris looking like a penis, then it would not have been so problem. But there is a internal problem also. What happens in the during embryogenesis, due to excessive and inappropriate, that is excessive exposure of the androgenic it is the of the androgenic steroids during early part of gestation. In the early part of gestation, the embryo or the fetus is that is embryo is exposed to more androgenic steroids. That is why it becomes the genitalia become the male like. Okay, so that is female pseudohermaphrodite. Genetically, they are absolutely normal. Fine. Now, male pseudohermaphrodite, it has testes, but female type of the testes is there. The testicular tissues are there, but they are hidden. They are not very apparent from outside. They may be just looking like testes, or they may look like enlarged labia majora. Okay, but the testes are present inside, not in the abdomen. In the the pubic region only they are present, but they are not quite apparent. And they have a female type genitalia, but the genetic configuration is male. So there is no problem in the genetic configuration, no mosaic, nothing. So it is 46XY like any normal male, and it happens due to mutations in the androgen receptor gene. Okay, so there is some mutation in the androgen receptor gene. That genetic mutation leads to male hermaphroditism. Male hermaphroditism. Okay, and similarly in the female pseudo hermaphroditism, there is also some genetic mutation which may happen. This is not written there, but there is some genetic mutations happen. That's why they are female pseudo hermaphrodites. And the genetically determined defects of androgen synthesis, action, or both. So that is due to the androgen receptor gene deficiency, the mutations, not deficiency, mutations, there are effects on androgen synthesis or both. Okay, and most common is that complete androgen insensitivity syndrome, which results from the mutation in the gene encoding androgen receptor. Okay, so this the commonest form of male pseudohermaphrodite is complete androgen insensitivity syndrome. Means that the androgen is synthesized either less, or the androgen which is synthesized, it is deficient in action. Okay, so though the person is a male, but phenotypically the genotype, the genitalia, they look like females. And not only that, they may have some problem with during they may have some sterility problems also. There might be some sterility problems because the androgen functioning is not complete. So they may have some problems, especially during when they are married. Okay, so this is male pseudohermaphrodite, one is female pseudohermaphrodite. So these are the terms you should be aware of. What is true hermaphrodite, where both ovarian and testicular tissues are present. Pseudohermaphrodite, only one type of gonad is present. Female will have female gonad, male will have male gonad, but there may be suboptimal function. Suboptimal functioning may be there. It may be not fully functioning as in case of a normal male or a normal female. That's why this term has come. So there may be some amount of hypogonadism. Okay, there may be definitely there is hypogonadism. So there is the hormone levels may be less, and the functioning of the this particular the secondary sexual characteristics etc. may not be so well prominent, and there will be problem during conceiving and childbirth, females, and during during marriage and reproduction, there will be differently problem. Understand? So this is all in a nutshell about the chromosomal disorders, because there are so many other things. We can go into so many other things, but we have restricted ourselves. But now we will go to the diagnosis of chromosomal disorders. In a only 2 to 3 slides we will take, and diagnosis, how to diagnose them. You have to understand that these disorders, if they can be detected in when the child is not born, prenatal diagnosis, that is very that can be a very good thing for the mother. Okay, but unfortunately most of them are not detected prenatally. And we have the categories of genetic tests, like diagnostic genetic test, which is used to confirm the physical sign, that only can happen postnatally, once the child is born and it's showing certain physical characteristics. Suppose the baby is showing genetic features of Down syndrome, we can go for a diagnostic test. Predictive test, they used to detect genetic mutations associated with disorders that can appear later in life. Okay, that will predict that this can happen. Okay, carrier identification, used by people with family history of recessive genetic disorder. You can identify the carrier, like carrier of thalassemia disorder, carrier of other genetic disorders like sickle cell trait, and mostly with Mendelian characteristic, we try to go for carrier identification. Okay, prenatal test, when you test of a fetus when there is a risk of risk of bearing a child with mental or physical disabilities, like in case of Down syndrome, or the mother who has given birth to some other abnormal child, suppose Edward syndrome, Patau syndrome, or any syndrome. So then the second child, when the child is in uterus, the I mean during that time the prenatal screening is done. Newborn screening, preventive measure once the baby is born, but once the baby is born, the damage is already done. You cannot do anything more other than just follow the course of action and do supportive therapy. And forensic testing, research testing, other things are there. Now, how do we approach? Most important, as I was telling you, prenatal screening, which is done in second trimester of all mothers as a preventive measures these days, is mostly to identify Down syndrome and also some other syndromes like neural tube defects. Okay, so we do for quad screen test, we do the alpha fetoprotein estimation of mother, beta HCG, and estriol estimation. And if we have a quad screen test available, then we add this inhibin A. So these are expensive tests, but mostly this is very important these days. Who can afford, this is advocated. And second trimester, okay, and increased level of this, there's a graph which will give the percentage of how much after that this test is complete. There is a graph which will show what is the percentage of association of this particular thing with a particular disease. That is most important, is the neural Down syndrome, the neural tube defects. So this will indicate the association. Okay, so indicate the association, that if there is this graph is there, this pattern is there, so it will indicate the percentage. If the high percentage is there of a particular disease indication, it will not say that it is there, but it will say the association, that the chances of having this is so much. So if the chances become much higher, then the mother has on the gynecologist, they will decide whether to go for this abortion. Okay, that is so once this is very important screening test. So other screening tests can be during the antenatal period, can be amniocentesis. We can take out some amniotic fluid and go for the karyotyping of the fetal cells and molecular testing of the fetal cells, or chorionic villus biopsy can be taken from the villus through fetoscope, and all these things we can do, and we can take the villus biopsy, and which is very risky. Amniocentesis is risky because it can impart infection, and there may be subsequent death, intrauterine death of the fetus. And chorionic biopsy is even riskier procedure, because you are taking a tissue from the villus, which can lead to intrauterine death. Okay, so one has to be very careful, because the procedures are risky. They may impart infection, they may lead to IUD, but if necessary, if there is a strong history of genetic disease in the previous child or in the family, this may be necessary. Okay, now postnatal screening, it is done. We have already listed the category of tests. So this is in suspected children and adults, we do cytogenetic and molecular test may be done. What are these tests? What are the cytogenetic and molecular tests? This is the list. The sample is, in prenatal test, amniotic fluid or chorionic villus. In postnatal test, there may be blood or mouth swab. Okay, so either blood of the whose blood, child's blood, blood or mouth swab. We can take a swab from the mouth and we can go for testing of the shed squamous epithelial cells from the mouth, and we can go for conventional cytogenetics and G banding. This is important. You have to go for this conventional cytogenetics because you cannot exclusively go for a molecular testing. It has been proved time and again that both conventional cytogenetics and molecular methods go hand in hand. It is not you can go just in for one if you have if you have a high-end laboratory, you just do only PCR, southern blotting, etc. No, you have to keep a conventional cytogenetics as well, and that will conventional cytogenetics will show the especially the chromosomal disorders, the alteration in the number of chromosomes. Okay, so that is very important, and this conventional cytogenetics can be supplemented by fish, where you can see the number of there is this chromosomal and this there is a probe which can chromosomal assay probe which can detect the number of chromosomes. Okay, so if you are tagging that particular thing, suppose I want to see the chromosome 21, presence of chromosome 21, I use the probe chromosome 21 and it will say the number of chromosomes in that particular cell. So if it is, I tag a green tag chromosome 21, if the number says there are three chromosomes 21, I can immediately know that it is a Down syndrome. Conventional cytogenetics will also show an extra number of chromosomes, and fish will also show fish is a little expensive than conventional cytogenetics. And there is a list of molecular assays or tests which are available, starting from polymerase chain reaction to southern blotting, and for variation in DNA sequences, that is to detect the polymorphism, we have the SNPs and RLPs. Okay, single nucleotide polymorphism and this random length polymorphism. Okay, then there can be DNA sequencing by Sanger sequencer or the next generation sequencer. These days the NGS is more preferred, and genome wide association studies can be studied for complex multifactorial disorders which we were discussing, for atherosclerosis and other diseases, and use of surrogate markers can be done in genome of that are known as in genomes, they are known as loci. So these are the various tests which are available for to us these days, and depending on the person's ability, because eventually one has to pay. The person or the mother or the family of the mother, if they are not able to pay, we cannot go for this. That is very simple. Though there are government institutions where they are done at a much lesser rate, but eventually the cost factor, and since we are a developing country where many people belong to a very low socioeconomic category, so they may not be able to afford these high-end molecular tests. Okay, but conventional cytogenetics is rather cheap, and it can be done to detect the chromosomal disorders. But for the Mendelian disorders, the mutational disorders, it is difficult because you need higher-end tests like PCRs. So this is an example where we have done this. These are not the actual chromosomes. This is all an image taken from the book. So this shows number of chromosomes here. The 21st chromosome, we have one extra chromosome. Okay, so this is the extra chromosome in 21st chromosome. In fish, this is detected by 3 red dots. So that we have, it was the probes were used with 13 and 21 chromosomal probes. So these chromosomal probes show number 13 to be normal. Only 13 chromosomes are there in this particular cell, whereas there are 3 chromosomes 21 in this cell. So this proved that it is trisomy 21 and not trisomy 13. So there may have been some confusion the child whether it is a Patau syndrome or Down syndrome. So it was proved that it is Down syndrome, as there were 21 chromosomes. Number of chromosome, 21st chromosome were 3. So these are the indications we have already discussed, so I am not going to dwell upon. So you have to find out when to do genetic testing. But in all mothers of 35 over 35 years of age, this prenatal testing, especially the blood test, that is a triple or quad test, is very very important and can be easily practiced. It involves money, yes, but it will save the birth of a child who is having this problem. So if you give birth to that child, the whole life of the parent is disturbed in rearing up that child. And postnatal genetic test is performed on the peripheral blood lymphocyte. So you collect the blood, and in some cases you collect the oral swab, that is sperma cells, and then you can do postnatal genetic testing. What is the management? Once these children are born, how do you manage? So in cases of sexual sex chromosomal disorders, we can give a hormonal replacement, and there has been good results with that. And in children with Down syndrome, we have to give for, basically we have to aim for the normal activities. We have to at least do some therapies like speech therapy, physiotherapy, vocational therapy, so that they can be socially useful. They can lead a socially useful life. Okay. And whenever there are complications, we can try to treat the complications. Suppose the VSD or ASD is there, we can treat those by surgery. If the stenosis is there, we can treat that by surgery. And if other complications like malignancies can develop, that is, as much as we can, we have to treat them. And finally, the counseling and that of the child and parents is very important. Once that type of a child is born to a parent, the parents break down completely. The parents' mental makeup is broken down. So to give morale boosting, to help them, that the parents take care of their child. Many people, they abandon the child at times, they try to kill the child at times. So instead of that, if the parents can be counseled properly, the parents can make the child lead a relatively useful social life. Okay, so that is important, because the counseling is very important these days, because of lot of emotional and psychological problems which are happening in children because of this lockdown period. We are going into second year lockdown, so lot of children are suffering from emotional and mental health problems. So we need to address them, and counseling, this is one of the most very important areas which has come up. Thank you so much for your attention, and I will definitely give the PDF of this lecture and mail to Sir Naveen Sir, and thank you.
Thank you,
If you
Dr.
have any
Palash.
queries, I can answer, and if I can answer later on also.
Yeah, we can take the queries and you can answer them later on the Telegram channel. Thank you so much. A wonderful lecture, very comprehensive. Indeed, counseling is the most important part in the treatment process of all these genetic disorders. And that's right. And very nicely explained, Dr. Palash, the Turners, the Klinefelters, the Downs, the genetic alteration, the way of testing, the way of detecting. Very nicely done. Thank you so much. What will be the next lecture, sir?
Sir, the same, we will continue with the Mendelian disorders in genetics.
Mendelian disorders. Okay,
So,
genetic session 3.
Session 3, sir.
Right. Thank you so much. Right. Take care. Bye bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye. God bless you. Bye.